Greetings and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that's trying to find new and creative ways to try out the myriad of games we've had to skip over the years. Whether it's trying a new Oreo or a new strategy RPG, we're in the business of expanding our horizons. I'm your host, Jordan Rudek, and this week we're introducing a new format where we take a shot, rather than a pint, of a lengthy RPG before deciding whether we want to continue with it. Joining me in this experiment is a man who's always been up for experimenting with a new brew. It's David Lloyd.
Yes, I do love to experiment with new experiences and new games. However, I will say ahead of time that I'm moody and emotional and make snap decisions. So if in the spirit of this new format as we go forward, we've already we're going to talk about a game today. We've got another game that we're working on. There's going to be times where I'm down and up and all over the place.
I mean, I think that's almost the purpose of this new format, this new episode style, and not just to make sure we're ever clear about this. This isn't the episode of all the format of all Thirsty Mage episodes going forward, but just a new kind of style of something we want to try, just to give us an opportunity to dig out the backlog and see which games we want to spend more time with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it might be that the subtitle of this game is going to be defining your mood for this one at least, and maybe the next game we do as well. But yeah, we're talking today about Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen. This is a PS3 and Xbox 360 game, originally released in May 2012, basically worldwide. Around all the different regions got it in May of that year. So this game is more than 10 years old. The Dark Arisen kind of expanded version, that content came a year later. And so the Dark Arisen version is the one we are playing. I played on Switch. The game was heavily discounted down to about $7 or $8 Canadian. Very, very cheap. So it felt like it was a good time to jump in finally. David, where did you play this game?
I played it on my Steam Deck, and I also paid about $7.
Yes, yeah. So that might be another theme with the 5-hour trials we're doing here. Is that if it's an opportunity to grab something that's been on a wish list, or if it's on Game Pass or PS Plus or something like that, this feels like that. Those are the games we're going to kind of be finding here. So to that end, like if it's something that if this sounds good to you, or it's some game you might want to try, hopefully you'll be able to get it at a similar discount or similar. Maybe free price for your subscription service. That would be kind of good too. So let's get right into it here. Dragon's Dogma. David, what's your experience been like with the game? What did you think? Beginning, middle, end. Where are you at with this one?
So I did not play past the 5 hours. I put in my 5 hours and that's where I stopped. The highest compliment that I will give the game, I think, is that the amount of money I paid is about the amount of enjoyment I got out of it. $7 worth.
That's right.
I don't know. It was weird. It was one of those games. Like, to put it into context, this came out at the same time as Skyrim, which is an infinitely better game. So I'm sure this got its lunch eaten by Skyrim back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll compliment Capcom, I think, was the developer here. Yeah. The compliments I will give it, though, is it was different. It wasn't like it was an action RPG, but it did some things that I haven't really seen before. Now, I haven't seen since, so maybe that says something too. But, I mean, a few neat things that it does. I guess the things that stood out for me were they had this pawn system, they called it. The story was really weird because it was basically like the character, your nameable character, your created character, whatever, because that was the big thing back then, was that they had their heart eaten, or I think it was the whole heart. It was ripped out of your chest and eaten.
By a dragon, yeah.
Yeah, so now you have you're basically walking around with no heart and the dragon, and there's like this link between you and this dragon for whatever reason. Anyone who's watched the movie Dragonheart, it really feels like something out of that. I think it was the opposite, though. I think the dragon put his heart in the guy or something.
That might be right,
yeah. So the why there was this connection wasn't really explained yet. I'm sure maybe if I played more than 5 hours, they'd explain it. But there is also this other dimension where these pawns, or which are basically just humans with no emotion, they're just basically drones. You go and you basically recruit them to be on your killing squad. I guess you can have up to 3 characters walking around with you. That you got your warriors, mages, rogues. I think that might be no. There's
There's
got to be a
seven.
4th
There's
one.
7 classes in total, but some of them are more advanced. So I think at the beginning, yeah, you have like a warrior, fighter, a rogue who can do ranged combat, and then you have a
Wizard.
mage, and those are the 3 at the beginning. But there are 4, there are other advanced
Yeah.
classes too.
Yeah, so you basically round out your team, and then at the beginning you're basically just kind of you start off at this little fishing village, and then you're kind of moving your way up, and so that there's the 3 characters that you never control, like they're doing their own thing. You can assign them. Uh, it's not really actions per se, but you can define their personalities. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want someone to be aggressive, you can have them like attack despite whatever their health is, or if you have someone fight conservatively, they'll heal them, they'll focus on healing or
It's
whatever.
almost like giving them tactics, right? Like it
Yeah.
kind of not advice or like do this exactly, but here's the kind of pattern I want you to follow. And we've seen other games do that where you can kind of tailor your NPCs or your party members to, fighting style a little bit, right?
It reminded me of Final Fantasy 12, which would have came out a couple years earlier, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, in the sense where like there you assign the tactics. Now Final Fantasy 12 is much more specific.
It
Like you
is,
could
yeah. The
literally
gambit
say
system's
like
much more specific. Yeah.
yeah, so you could really tailor it, but this one was more general.
I was thinking a
Um
little bit of Dragon Quest or no, not Dragon Quest, Dragon Age Origins. I think that I mean, yes, I believe
yeah.
you can tell your party exactly what you want them to do, but I think you can also give them tactics, like what kind of style you want them to have as well, just
Yeah.
so you're not spending all that time necessarily deciding every single action they do, which can be tedious. So I think we have seen this in other games for sure.
Yeah, and this is an action RPG, so you're in a third person perspective throughout the game, and so you don't really have an opportunity to even command anyone really because you're more focused on your own thing.
Sure.
And it's kind of like your standard action RPG with jumping and punching and slashing or whatever, but there's this one strange thing to the whole uh, combat, and there's like a grab mechanic where basically like you can grab enemies or you can climb enemies. There's kind of like this little prologue where you're playing as these characters from the past, and uh, so you kind of get a taste of what the combat will be later in the game. But your pawns can literally like put them in a full Nelson, and then you can just stab them,
Right. Yeah.
which is really funny.
Yeah.
Um, there's like these huge monsters that you can grab them, and then you can like climb on their back and just stab them in the back while you're like trying to rodeo and stay on. Uh, it's just really strange, and this is all happening with kind of your clunky, PS3 era graphics. So it's they're it's this weird, like the movement can feel a bit weird. I know Paige had mentioned that I think she played like an hour and got sick,
Yeah.
for, like motion sickness from it, because especially when you're on the monster, it's like the camera shakes with you, like when the monster's trying to shake off. So it can be disorientating in a certain sense, and sometimes you don't even know where. Like there was this one monster I was on, and it was like a hydra, so I'm like climbing up a snake-like figure, but I'm not going like straight up. I'm kind of like circling around, and I'm like trying to like manipulate the joystick so that I'm still going up and not just around and stuff. It was strange.
Yeah, it's a little cumbersome with some of the creatures to try to get like to the point on their body that you want to be, whether that's cutting off the Hydra's head or getting to the top of the Cyclops so you can stab it in the eye. Like some of that is not as easy. Like I think it's an interesting premise of climbing these monsters out of something like Shadow of the Colossus or something. But obviously in that game, I feel like it's done a lot better. But this one, I commend them for kind of introducing new mechanics to this type of game, this Skyrim style of action RPG. And the game, meeting the NPCs, getting their side quests and stuff like that, it's all, pretty, these are things we've all experienced before. I think it's done well enough. I wish the signposting was a little bit better. I think we've had a similar issue with our time with the game, is that trying to figure out where to go next, exactly who to talk to, what the order of operation should be. Not all of that is crystal clear. You can pick up a lot of side quests, and trying to find out who you're supposed to talk to next and try to decipher even the city maps and things like that is not all that easy. These are things I'm really thankful for in more contemporary games. And I know it's, we say, it's 11 years old, but in video game years, 11 years is a long time. That's like a generation and a half, right? So a
Yeah.
lot has changed from PS3 and 360 era to now. And playing these games after, playing more contemporary games that just have all these quality of life features, it really is a little bit tough to go back. So I think that's one of my impressions with Dragon's Dogma here, is that it hasn't aged gracefully. And I can understand why people would like it. I think the pawn system is neat. I think that some of the climbing and combat mechanics are neat too. But this game is definitely in need of an update. And that's another reason why I wanted to do this as well, is that we got an announcement recently about Dragon's Dogma 2. We know this game is getting a full sequel, a long time after the original. So hopefully, they've learned a lot in the intervening years, and whatever team is working on this game from Capcom is going to, just absorb all the games that have come before it, and know what makes a compelling action RPG now.
Yeah, the signposting was definitely one of my biggest pet peeves in this game, because now there, like you said, there is kind of a map that's on the screen, and it does now and then show you like a circle of like, oh, this is where your quest, this is where you need to go to get the quest. And so I was following it for the most part.
Yeah.
But very early on, it gets to a quest where it's like, well, you have to talk to this girl at night on this pier. And I'm like, I go to the pier, no one's there, and I'm like, okay, well, how do I make it night? Like, I don't know, I don't recall them ever telling me that I had to go to the inn to rest, and then I had to choose the option to rest until nightfall, which was okay, fine, whatever. So I figured it out. I go and talk to the girl, and she's like, oh, I want you to go to this island to I need help on this island. So I'm like, okay. So then we go to the island, and you get dummied very, very early. Like it. And then I Google it, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, did I miss something? And then I realize it says like, oh, well, that island is actually the DLC, and you shouldn't even think about trying this until you beat the game.
It's like, basically post-game content, and like telling you to go there the first hour or two. It's so funny.
It's the quest. Like, that's what the quest was.
It has a quest marker, yeah. I mean, the assumption is like you're starting a new game and maybe carrying over your level or something like that, and then you're starting the Dark Arisen content. It's very weird, but yeah, certainly not done in any kind of seamless way. Like, very much easy to deceive new players of the series, I'd say.
And you definitely like, and even then, so as I'm trying to figure out, I thought, well, I guess I was looking at this as kind of a Skyrim thing, in the sense that like with Skyrim, you could kind of just look around and see what's going on, and maybe duck into a cave here and fight a couple people. So I thought, well, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do, so I'll look around. There's side quests everywhere. Like, there's these green question marks above people's heads where they'll ask you to do things. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a few side quests. I'll figure it out. And there's one where the guy's like, go down to the well and see what's going on down there. There's like an enemy down there. So I'm like, okay. So I get down there, and there's this big lizard. And so, I got three party members with me, and there's one lizard, and he's like a damage sponge. But after like a few minutes, I finally kill him. And then all of a sudden, 4 of the exact same boss jump out, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I'm practically dead." And I was dead within seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Okay, this is clearly not something I could do now." So then, I go back to this fort nearby, and I'm like, "All right, is there somewhere else I can go?" So they tell me about these bandits in the cave. So I'm like, "Okay, walk in there," and again, I see a couple bandits in one room, so I start attacking them and realize like they're way over leveled compared to what I am. And then all of a sudden, 4 bandits run out of another room, and I can't even get out of the room now. So I'm getting just creamed by 6 bandits. I'm like, my God, like I can't do anything in this game.
Mhm. Yeah, the beginning is it can be tricky, right? If you're not going to certain places or you kind of stray off the beaten path, I don't know that it rewards exploration as much here. It's more like, hey, I found this place. It's clearly not ready for me to do yet. I need to come back there later. Um, but in that first 5 hours, you really do want to follow the main story quests of like, yeah, you get to this village, you encounter the Hydra, you meet like this warrior woman who's kind of I don't know, she works for the Duke or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then you end up taking the Hydra head to this big castle, and the big castle is kind of like this center point of the first act. I think the game it consists of kind of three acts loosely. So you do this, and then it opens up these other big quests. But what happened to me, one of the kind of bigger quests at the end of Act One, you have to go to this fortress, and so this is the good story that I have of the game. You've shared a couple of good ones, David. I think that what's kind of fun about this 5 hour trial format is that we can have these good stories even if we don't see the end of the game and give like a review score or anything like that. We're at the very least able to tell a story and hey, do people want to play it based on that? So I got this major quest from the kind of the sergeant at arms or something from at the major castle there. And he tells me, okay, you got to go to this fortress. We've got an army there. We need to take back the fortress or take back the castle from these orcs. And I have to do this big trek to get over there. I take the long way around because I haven't explored too much of the map. There's supposed to be a cave that maybe you can get to the fortress a lot easier, but I take this long way around. In this long way, I get caught in this forest, and it's dark, and at nighttime, and you have to pull out a lantern to kind of light your way. So I've got this lantern, but the lantern can run out of oil, and so my lantern's running out of oil. I'm getting swarmed by all these orcs. They just keep coming. My pawns are dying. I have to keep reviving them, and I'm like, God, this is the end. I'm going to lose all my progress. I've made it this way. Spend 30 minutes in this forest. I'm gonna lose all of that. I'm gonna have to start over again. Um, one thing happens to me. I get blinded by one of these orcs, and when you get blinded, when you get the status effect blind on your character, you basically can't see anything. Like the screen just goes black. I'm like, am I glitched out here? Like, my lantern's on? Like I can see I'm carrying my lantern. I've got this sliver of light beside me, but I can't see anything in the screen. And fortunately, I had one potion, like one cure-all remedy type potion to get rid of status effects, and I use that. I get rid of the blind effect, and at that point, I just run. I'm like, I don't care. My pawns are going to die. I'll have to go revive them at the temple or whatever later, the seeing stone or whatever it is. But I'm going to run to this fortress and see what happens. So I get to the fortress. I have only got one pawn left, and I did at the fortress. I couldn't find where I have to complete this quest. I couldn't find like a place to revive my fallen pawns. So it's just me and one other guy, and so I have to kind of sneak into this fortress and open up the big gate for the rest of the army that's waiting outside. Uh, so there's tons of enemies in there. I can take down some of them, but I'm mostly still running around here. Long story short, I let the army in, and the army gets killed. Like the head of the army gets killed. I fail the quest, and I have to go back. Head in my hands or tail between my legs, back to the main castle and tell them, we've completed the quest, but it failed. And so I guess that counted. Like I still got experience and everything for it, but now like that soldier is dead. I guess. So
Oh
so
my
now
god.
like, their head of the army is just gone, and the rest of their soldiers have kind of, I don't know if they disbanded or they had to kind of hobble back to the castle with me or something like that. But it was just a pretty crazy like hour or hour and a half that I spent just doing this one quest of traveling to the fortress that's been infested with these orcs, getting our asses kicked by all manner of creatures that are in this castle, and then on top of it failing the quest and having to go back to the castle and admit the failure. So the game has some kind of really interesting moments, and I guess interesting quest lines that can go in kind of unique ways. And I guess that obviously the Skyrim comparisons are apt, but it has that versatility like Skyrim does too, where there's kind of multiple ways to go about things or different ways to get to your objective, I guess. And I respect it. I like it for that.
Yeah, I guess the my craziest story uh was there's near the end of the 5 hours there was you have to kind of go under the city to this area where the pawns, like, I don't know, the pawns have this area under the city that they used to like congregate at or something, and there's an evil presence there now. So they're like, yeah, go down, can you go down and see what's going on down there? So I'm like, okay, fine. And so I make it down to the bottom, and there's this massive ogre near the bottom, and I'm shooting at it. Like, I'm a rogue, so I'm shooting arrows. It's not doing anything. I'm like, okay, I go like jump on its back, and I'm just stabbing, it's not doing anything. um the ogre like destroys all three of my pawns, so I'm like, okay, I'm booking it out of there. This is when I realized that if you run away really far from an enemy, the pawns will respawn beside you even though they're
Yes,
dead.
that's right.
so
Yeah.
so you can just revive them. So I did that, and I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. So I go online and see like, how do you defeat the ogre, and there's no real explanation. It's just like whatever I was doing was what I was expected to do. So I'm
Yes.
like, oh, okay, I have no whatever. I'll try again. At this point, I was ready to give up because I'm like, if this is like the wall of difficulty that I can't progress anymore because of this ogre, like, screw it, I'm not playing anymore. So I go back to the ogre, and same thing's happening. I'm just not doing any damage. It's gonna take like 2 hours to kill it. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But all of a sudden, the ogre, runs at me, and I jump out of the way, and then he falls. He falls off the stairs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he kills himself.
Yeah, I think I might have had that happen one time too. It was so funny. I'm like, okay, well, that's good because he had like two
Yeah,
more health meters left to go.
yeah. Well, I think I might have taken like 10% out of him at that point.
Yeah.
So and it was funny because he makes this weird, like, it was almost like the Wilhelm scream
Mhm.
where the ogre was like, ah! And I'm like, what happened? What
Yeah, that's
happened?
good. That's
And
good.
the ogre's dead. But then the next infuriating thing happens where I get to the bottom, and I saved at that point because I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm fighting this ogre again. So I save, and I make it to the very bottom, and all of a sudden these tentacles are coming out of the ground, and my pawns are like, you know, we have to get out of here. There's too many, and I'm like, okay, but I'm like attacking the tentacles, and I'm killing a couple, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know where my pawns went, so I'm looking around for them, and all like they're still coming up trying to attack me, so I can't figure out where to go for the life of me.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing circles and circles, and I just die. And I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm not killing them fast enough, so I go down and keep doing it, and I keep dying. The pawns keep saying like, run, and I'm like, run where? Where do you want me to run? Like, there's nowhere else. Like, you can't. There's nowhere else in the bottom of the progress or whatever. And again, it doesn't work. And so third time, go down, do it again. All the pawns are dead. I got nothing left. So I was just like, screw it. I'm just gonna leave. I'll figure something. I'll go to some other place for my last. Like, I think there's only an hour left of my playthrough at that point. So I just beeline it back to the entrance, only to discover that was what I was supposed to do the entire time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I assume I had to go back? Just leave. Like, you told me to go down there and defeat the evil. And the guy's like, oh man, it's a pretty bad dude down there. Maybe you shouldn't go down there. I'm like, oh, thanks, buddy.
I mean, we can count on one hand, maybe less, the number of times an RPG has asked us to purposefully run away, right? Like that
Yeah,
is the request. That is the way to advance, is to run away. It just doesn't happen very often, right? We're not accustomed to that. And again, as silly as it is, as like, as not familiar with that choice to make in an RPG, for it to happen this early in this game is kind of nuts, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like, is it maybe kind of pushing us, like maybe you have to think of like outside the box, those kind of solutions for later puzzles, like, discretion's the better part of valor thing. You have to be considering that more often here. You can't just assume you're going to fight your way out of everything, which we usually do in a game like this, right? So yeah, an interesting choice there for sure, that you get to the bottom of this temple, and your pawns, and maybe that's the lesson, is that you're supposed to listen to your pawns. And there are times in the game, maybe early on when you first meet the pawns, where it tells you like, oh, you have to pay attention to them. Like, you have to kind of notice what they're saying. That's an important thing that happens here. So I don't know. It's funny. Like, we had the exact same experience there. We get to the bottom. We're fighting or trying to fight our way out. Why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? Let's just run away. Oh, and that was the right answer. Like, it's funny. It's funny. And
yeah.
I'm sure we're not alone in this. I'm sure this has happened to other players too. But I just found that part funny for sure.
Yeah. Well, when you said other out of the box solutions too, was so we had mentioned the Hydra. So there's this fortress that you initially get to where they explain the pawn system. So that's when you get your first pawns. And so they go out and they're like, oh, you need to talk to this knight to get your next quest or whatever. So I go talk to her, and she's like, oh, go rest in the inn. So I'm like, okay. And then the Hydra comes out. So it's this massive boss
Yeah, it's
that's
huge.
destroying the fortress. And like, I don't even know how to hit the boss, like, because you can kind of run up to it and slash it, but it's not doing anything. And you can see that it has like there's a health meter, but then there's multiple health meters underneath. So
Yeah, it's
it's
got
like,
like 7 or 8 health meters, right? You're thinking you're not supposed to beat this boss. Like this is
yeah,
like an hour or two into the game. Like you're
yeah,
you're still very early on here.
yeah. So the pawns are screaming at me to cut the heads. So I'm like, I don't understand how do I cut the heads? So I'm watching the Hydra. Um, so the Hydra will bite. So there's not only is there your pawns there, but there's also the soldiers from the fortress that are also helping you fight. And I'm watching the Hydra, you know, come out and bite a soldier, throw them up in the air, and then swallow them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I guess I have to slash at them when they're like trying to bite the soldiers or whatever. And so I'm standing next to a soldier, but it's not working. Like whenever I attack, it's like the Hydra's already gone. Like it's bit the soldier and it's backed away. Like I can't attack. So I'm like, okay, that's clearly not working. So then I was I was remembering. Have you ever seen the Disney movie Hercules?
Oh,
The
of course.
Disney,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, so in that movie, Hercules got swallowed and he cut the head off from inside.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so I let myself get eaten, and I'm they show me like in the gullet or in the throat of the Hydra, and I'm thinking, okay, this is like I just have to spam the attack button, and any second now it'll cut out. And I'm watching like my body go down. Like this is minutes, not seconds.
Yeah.
Minutes of my body still inside the Hydra, slowly going down the neck. And I'm thinking, okay, any second now. And then I get the death game over. I'm
Yeah.
like, what?
The exact
What are
same
you
thing happened to
talking
me.
about?
The exact same thing happened. We had the exact same thought process. I thought, okay,
Yeah,
yes, I probably have to do it from the inside because I was trying to climb around the outside. I couldn't get to the top where I thought I'd be able to slash the head off. And so, yeah, I think, okay, yeah, maybe you have to do it from the inside. There's a logic there, I suppose, right? We've seen that
yeah.
in movies, sure, maybe other games too, but
It's like, nope, you just had to, third time was the charm. I finally climbed up the neck,
yeah, yeah,
got high enough, and then I slashed, and then it was like, it was actually jarring because it was like it immediately went to the cutscene where the Hydra's head was on the ground, and
that's right.
the knight was like, "Oh, you vanquished the Hydra," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, all I did was attack once.
We were just flailing around randomly. We weren't trying to be successful here. We were just,
Yeah,
seeing what would work. But yeah, it's funny. We I don't. This game, it feels, it looks the same. It has some similar mechanics, but there's just something kind of unexplainable or awkward about it, right?
yeah,
It's that it feels like that you're doing things and you don't know whether they will work or not, or that things you think will work don't. There's something missing in that logic, I suppose. And um, I don't know how many more hours it would take of playing this game to figure that out. Like I played more than you. I probably played 8 to 10 hours, and I got a little bit further. I got into Act Two. I met the Duke. I was given quests by him as well. I finished kind of all the end of Act One quests that allow you to kind of have that audience with the Duke. And I still felt like at the end of all of that, like that I didn't have a great grasp of how to play the game well. Even upgrading my equipment or changing out my pawns. I changed out my pawns a little bit, and fortunately I did, because the beginning of Act Two, which is kind of where I wrapped up, you go to this kind of castle in the distance. No, sorry, there's two parts to it. The first part is you are trying to kill this griffin that has been kind of plaguing the town, I guess, or attacking merchants. So you have to set some bait for the griffin outside the big castle, and you're with a bunch of soldiers, and you fight this griffin. If you don't kill the griffin, if you just wound it, it flies off to this tower way in the distance. So I have to walk this treacherous path through this valley to get to this tower. And this mission, the second half of this mission is just incredibly tough. Like I'm barely scraping by here. You're going through the kind of Griffin's tower here. You're getting attacked by all these really tough enemies. There's different things that can happen there. You can save some of the NPCs in the army that are with you. And I've had that experience already of like failing that fortress mission, so I understand like there's our opportunities to lose or to not lose the kind of people that are in your company at that moment. But I get to this big arena, and it's the final showdown with this griffin, and I'm literally down to my last like sliver of health here. Like I shouldn't be able to win this. I'm running around. If I get attacked, I'm probably dead. I'm going around reviving my pawns. I was lucky enough to get a. I cashed in the first pawn. Did you get Rook on your team? Is Rook the default
Yeah,
pawn that everybody gets? Yeah.
I think so. I had Rook. Yeah.
So Rook is a mage, and at least I think he's a default mage. So he had healing. He had like a fire spell that he could cast, or he could imbue your weapon with fire. I changed him in, or I subbed him out for another mage who had a healing spell, but had some kind of firewall type ability. And unfortunately, I did, because that was the only way I was going to take down this griffin. But the griffin had like 3 or 4 meters of health. It was really really tough. It's flying around this arena. I've lost like almost all the soldiers from the army again that have traveled with me here, but it was one of those like you win by the skin of your teeth. Like you're on your last life, like you do that last hit, but if you get last hit, you're done. It was one of those moments. So
Yeah.
we love those, and I was really happy that kind of my final memory of the game is this really triumphant battle against this really really tough griffin. But the game is hard. I think this is just a difficult game. If you're not really paying attention to its mechanics and really trying to understand the systems and everything at play, I think it can be a really tough one to get through. Um, so I didn't call it quits after 5 hours. I wanted to see a little bit more. I thought I hit my stride a little bit. I completed some side quests. I thought I was getting a little bit stronger. I think the progression is interesting too. Like you can kind of go and unlock different skills and power them up. And so you use those skills just by you hold a trigger button, and then you press one of your attacking buttons. Um, I'll give I'll give it this critique, and I wonder if you had the same one, David. I think the stamina system is really broken. Like you run out of stamina just from sprinting or using your abilities, and then your character like kind of leans over and starts huffing and puffing, and you can't even
Yeah.
move.
For
You're
too
literally
long.
just
Yeah.
stopped. You're stopped for like 5 seconds, and in
Yeah.
the middle of the fight, I mean that's life or death, right? So you really got to be very careful about your stamina meter, and I think that holds the game back. It makes it a little bit more, a little less actiony, and a little bit more kind of you have to kind of go in, come out, go in, come out kind of thing. So that is a critique I would have about the game, and I hope that the second game, whenever that comes out, eliminates that kind of restrictive stamina system.
Yeah, like I don't mind. I think it's just the huffing and puffing part. Like I don't mind
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just kind of where it's like, well, now you can't use your specials. Like that makes
sure,
sense to
that's
me. Like,
fine. Yeah,
okay, let that recharge. But no, like you're just helpless. Like you're just standing there trying to catch your breath, and you're just there helpless.
yeah,
I had to abuse some of the potions
I
to
did
like get
too.
your stamina back, because it's like, well, if I stand for much longer, the ogre is gonna like punt me off the whatever. Like I had to
That's it.
use it a
Yeah.
few times. So,
Yeah,
but
when I was getting stuck in that forest, surrounded by orcs or and goblins and
yeah,
stuff, I'm just chugging back stamina potions here, like trying to find my way out and just seeing what would work. There seems to be a crafting system as well. Like you can different components that you have in your inventory, you can craft potions kind of on the fly. I think that's neat. You can collect a lot of monster parts as well, and maybe use them with items or with weapons. I didn't get into that enough.
did
Um,
you ever unlock fast travel?
Oh yes, that's a good one. So there is a fast travel. There's you can also pick up fast travel points and put them wherever you want, which is really neat. In theory, in practice, it doesn't work. At least I didn't find it to work super well. So there's an item you need to buy, and you might pick it up that allows you to fast travel. It's some kind of bell or lantern or some type of item like that. It's a consumable item. So then strike one. So you fast travel by using this consumable item. You can go to anywhere that has like this portcullis crystal kind of thing, and you find these. I think that the bottom of that pawn dungeon where the worms keep popping out. That I think that blue crystal is one you can teleport to. So
Oh,
there's these crystals you can pick up, and they're ones you can teleport to. So you could move it somewhere where you want to have a fast travel point, but you also find them just in dungeons, in cities, and ideally you would leave it there because in theory that's a place you want to go back to. So the big castle has one. I think some of the areas just have one built in, and I think you can pick those up as an item and then drop them somewhere else later, and that becomes a new fast travel point. But if you don't have those fast travel items in your inventory, you can't travel to those portals that you can pick up and move. So there's a lot of little steps there. Again,
Yeah.
none of that's explained. I just had to learn kind of through
Yeah, I
trial and
know.
error. And I used like my one fast travel item to go back to the castle, and then when I really needed it, I didn't have one, and so that was kind of brutal.
Well,
Yeah,
yes, because when I started playing, you had mentioned, oh, you need to go up to the castle. So I'm like, all right. So I headed up to the castle. Uh, I got jumped by like at least 15 wolves. It
yes,
had to have been
yes. There's a
15
lot.
wolves.
They
I
travel
couldn't
in
believe
packs.
it.
The rooks keep or the pawns keep telling you they travel in packs. Like,
Oh man, oh they're packs, all right. And then I got jumped by bandits.
yeah.
And then I finally get to the gate on the way to the castle, and the guy's like, "We're not letting you pass." And I'm like, "Come on!" So then I had to walk all the way back to the forest. Got
Yeah,
jumped by the bandits. Got jumped by the wolves again.
yeah,
And I'm like, what is going on? Like,
yeah,
I don't understand why. And it's so far away. Like, it's
yeah.
not even. It probably took me 5 minutes just to walk back to from like the forest to the gate, and that was a
Mm-hmm.
huge. Like, you're looking at the map and you're like, it shouldn't take this long.
Yeah, even with sprinting, your character just doesn't move that fast. And though this world isn't
Mm.
huge, but you just don't move very fast through it, and so it's made to feel a little bit bigger, maybe for that reason. Um, but yeah, I know the part you're talking about. You're supposed to carry this Hydra head on a cart through the mountain path, and then they let you in at the castle. Like, oh, you're this champion. You slain you damage the Hydra or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think once you get past Harbor, I think the game does open up. But it is one that is, I think it's a slow burn probably throughout. I think it takes a long time to get interesting. Yeah, and that early part is so treacherous that it's probably likely to put off a bunch of people too. That if you're not super experienced in games like this, or you're not prepared to kind of like just kind of ease your way through it and kind of do a bit of trial and error to figure this game out, I think it's going to put people off. So for that reason, it's tough. Um,
Requires determination. That's
yeah, no, it
yeah.
absolutely does, and because it's showing its age in that way, it's hard. It's hard to go back to this one. I think that the second one will be. I've just imagined the second one will be a lot better and hopefully more user friendly. Hope a little bit more approachable. And I think we see that with games where the sequel comes out. 5, 10, 15 years later. There's so much distance in between that and the original that I think they understand. Like, okay, we have to know that this is a new generation of people playing this, and we can't just expect them to play it like they played the first game or know all the things from the first game or something like that. So
I'm curious if Dark Souls would have. I guess it wouldn't. I was just thinking like for the difficulty thing, if
mhm,
but Dark Souls came out in 2011, and they
yeah,
would have
yeah,
been developing this before that. So I don't
for
think
sure.
can't imagine that would have affected unless they're like, oh my god, look at this game, we got to make ours harder. But maybe it was just kind of the kind of prevailing thing was it's like games need to have this like get good thing or something. But
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm really into Souls games, and this one, it doesn't feel too much like
it's
that.
not precise enough. Like
No,
feels too random.
the combat is a lot better, and at least I prefer the combat in Dark Souls. Like, this combat feels a little bit more clumsy, a little bit more start and stop. And I
Hmm.
and I get you have to do that in a Souls game too, but there's an elegance to it. I think this one is lacking a
What
bit.
class did you go with?
The fighter or the melee one.
Okay.
Just because I read that it had high defense, and I'm like, okay, I'm playing this game for the first time. I don't really know anything about it. Like, I want to make sure I can take a few hits, and it was good for that because I was quite tanky, and I could kind of maybe cheese my way through it a little bit, just knowing that I could take a bunch of hits before anything
Yeah.
bad would happen. So that was kind of nice. Um, I was also reading that the mage is a very difficult one to start with, so I was happy to have like a mage as a pawn rather than having to use one myself. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
yeah,
went with the rogue just because it felt Skyrim-ish to me. So
yes,
I'm like,
yes,
well this was my preferred build in Skyrim, so maybe I'll just stick with the rogue and use my bow and arrow, which maybe it gets more gets does more damage later in the game,
Mhm.
maybe, but it wasn't doing much early.
I never felt like I was ever doing much damage in this game. I always felt
Yeah.
like, maybe on the occasions when Rook, my pawn, would put fire on my sword. Yeah, and they're like, oh, wolves are weak to fire, or goblins. Everyone seems to be weak to fire,
Yeah.
for some reason. And when you get the fire on your sword, yeah, then I felt like I was doing some damage. But the thing that, like, lack of damage numbers, like lack of, like, really being able to tell how much damage you're doing when you swing your sword, like all that kind of stuff makes you feel a little bit ineffective, and that feeling persisted throughout the game. I never felt like I was doing a lot of damage. I'm just, all these enemies I'm meeting, I'm whittling them down bit by bit, and again, maybe this is just me not knowing how to play the game well, but nothing really
Yeah.
told me, okay, go here. Even you go to the town, you want to, okay, I want to buy a better sword in a town. Even that's an exercise in frustration. Like,
Yeah.
where's the shop? Oh, you only sell items here. You don't sell swords. Okay, where's the sword shop? Well, it's not indicated on the map. Your map isn't filled in of a town until you go to every store. So you have to wander around the town just to find out what the establishments are. So that's another kind of
Yeah.
frustrating thing. It's
I
hard to
w-
find your way.
yeah. I was wearing my potato sack for the majority of my 5 hours because
Oh yes,
I never like I eventually found the armorer
yeah,
in the main city like near the end, but yeah, I was running around half naked for
it's
most of the game
good.
because
It's
I just
good.
couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Like at some point, there's gonna be a drop where I could put on some clothes, right?
And I rarely found anything substantial in the treasure chests either. Like, I'd open a treasure and probably find some gold, and I'm like, oh, this gold is not very helpful because I don't know where to spend it. Like,
Yeah.
I've got all this gold. Now tell me where I can go to use it. Where
Well,
I'd find
even
items maybe, but
those skills that you had mentioned about like
yeah,
you learn skills at the inn.
that's
I
right.
don't know
Yes,
if
yes.
I've ever learned skills at an inn
It
before.
is a
Like it
funny
just
place to go to improve your character. Yeah. The
yeah.
inns seem to be these catch-alls. You can change day to night, you can heal yourself, you can learn your skills there, you can talk to people, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're like the pubs of the game, or the bars of the game, or something like that.
Well, and the save system was very unintuitive too because there's no save slots.
Mhm.
There's only one save. So if you save at any point like that, like you overwrite something, you're screwed.
That's right.
But there was one time where I was in the one dungeon under the city, and I'm getting dummied by the worms, and I'm like, okay, like I don't feel like waiting until I die, so I just went to load, and the only option was load last checkpoint. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, that was like an hour and a half
Yeah,
back
you
in the
don't
game.
want to do that.
And I'm like,
I
why
learned
am
that
I
lesson
back
the hard way
here?
too. Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
had
you
to
want to like
close my
load, you want
game.
to like continue. I think continue is the
Yeah.
option you want, as opposed to load the last checkpoint.
Well, I had to close. So I exited the game and then reopened the game. Went to load last or load save as
Yes,
opposed to
yes,
load
that's right.
checkpoint.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I was back, and I'm
Yeah.
like, what in the world?
Yeah, it distinguishes between checkpoint and save, which
Yeah.
is, again, a relic of the past. It's not, games aren't going to do that now. They might have an auto save or a quick save or something, and the
Or a
game we're going
save
to play
slot. Like
next.
I can't remember the last game I've played where it didn't have a save slot,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
multiple slots and stuff.
Yeah,
It's weird.
I mean, we're so thankful for, and you get spoiled, like Trails into Reverie. There's like
Yeah.
100 save slots. Like
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Octopath Traveler
I
can't
got
save
mad at
everybody.
Final Fantasy 16 because it limited me to 50.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
And,
I know. Isn't that funny?
yeah,
we're,
I'm
we're
like
we're
only
we're spoiled.
50. What
Yeah,
the?
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, if you're reviewing a game and you only have one or two slots, like, it's brutal. Like, it really
Oh
sucks, because
yeah.
especially if you want to get footage for an RPG to do a video review, and there's only one save slot. You're hoop. You literally have to stop yourself. Like, oh, this seems like a good part to record, or maybe you just finished like a really interesting part that would be part of your review. Oh well, I can't do that because I already finished it. I only have the one save slot, so that could be very
Yeah.
frustrating. But yeah, so our final call here after 5 hours, David. I think you've made it pretty clear. Your position is, no, a resounding, a full throated dark Arisen. Nope.
Yeah.
I did go past the 5 hours. I was happy that I did that because I think I had some pretty cool moments with the game. But ultimately, I do find it a little bit more frustrating than satisfying to play. I think the moments that kind of bring me enjoyment and entertainment are a little bit few and far between with this one. I That said, having played it, I am more interested in the sequel. Like, I'm going to pay more attention to it because I think there is a lot of potential here, and I can see this game trying and just missing the mark on things that its contemporaries did better. Right, Skyrim is a more organized, easy to play game. It's more approachable. The way the map fills in, figuring out where things are and where to go is a lot better. Dark Souls, the combat is better. The game feels, I think it feels better to play and to move in this game. This game feels a little bit slow and clunky. The jumping, the sprinting, the stamina mechanic, all that just doesn't feel great. So I am eager to see what the sequel brings, and I'm glad we got a chance to try this one.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think modern technology could make this game good. Like I think it may be one of those things where the ideas were too far ahead. Like they
Yes,
were
sure.
like what they wanted to do just wasn't possible with the technology they had, and maybe now that they have much more options, I think it is something that could potentially be a lot better.
Yeah.
I would even say for the $6 or $7 we paid, I like I'm not gonna complain. Like
Oh,
it
absolutely
was
not.
worth
No.
$7 just to
Yeah,
to give it a try. And like you said, it was neat. It was unique enough that I'm gonna go watch the trailer now for the new Dragon's Dogma
yeah,
because yeah, like it is possible that they could take what you know, and they have so many things in between that and this that they could easily pick up new like understand where their mistakes were.
for sure. And
Is
I think the pawn system is interesting. I think it's a cool system to kind of choose your NPC companions. There's also an online multiplayer component to this where people who are playing the game, their pawns or their characters become pawns or something like that, and you can recruit
yeah.
them to your team. Like it's neat. I didn't really play around with it too much, but I like that they're trying. Right. It's almost like the Dark Souls system of summoning another person to join your game. Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, even that didn't work very well and still doesn't work super well, right? So you see these companies experimenting with these first HD consoles, right? The first generation of HD consoles. You have developers probably spending a long time to make these games because it's now that first HD generation, trying new things that obviously weren't going to work. Dragon's Dogma has this Dark Arisen expansion that adds more content. It would have been really interesting to compare for us, compare the original release with the Dark Arisen expansion and see how much changed in that year. I bet you it was a bunch. I bet you
Yeah.
it wasn't just new content. I bet the game maybe played better as well. Maybe someone out there will correct us if they have that experience. But I definitely want to like look into this game more. I want to watch some speed runs. I want to see people kind of finish the game and see how it ends. All of that stuff. So absolutely a worthwhile experience, but I'm calling it quits a little bit after 5 hours, closer to 8 to 10 for me, and I think that's where we'll wrap up here.
Hmm.
But yeah, we're going to continue this series. The next game that we have lined up, and we've both already started it, is Lost Sphere. That is a Tokyo RPG Factory game. We already covered I Am Setsuna on the podcast. This game feels very similar to that, looks almost the same. So we'll see, how our 5 hour experience with Lost Sphere goes. Um,
I think it's part of the PlayStation Essential.
yes, yes, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
because Square Enix dropped like all these games into their Essential, and I remember downloading a bunch of them, and I'm pretty sure Lost Sphere was one of them.
It
I
is,
think.
David, because that's where I'm playing it. Actually, I
Okay.
realized like, okay, I've still my Lost Sphere copy on Switch is still sealed, so I'm like, I might as well just keep that sealed if it's already
Me
free
too.
on PlayStation, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
open that if we can play it somewhere else for free,
Well,
right? So
I
or with the
what's funny is
subscription.
I ended up buying it for $5 on Steam before.
Oh, there you go.
So I'm actually playing the Steam version because I didn't
Nice.
realize I had Lost Sphere when I bought it for $5.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There you go. Well, yeah, and again, you can get these games cheap. This is kind of a nice thing, and probably a theme that will continue. We're not probably not paying $70 for these games and then only playing 5 hours. You feel a little bit more compelled to go all the way through. But
Hmm.
it's nice, yeah, getting these games on a discount or with subscription service. The fact that we can just try them out and give some impressions, I think it's going to be a fun thing for us to do going forward. So Lost Sphere, that'll be our next one. Not sure when that will release. We've still got to put more time into that one, but stay tuned for more of these types of episodes from us. If you have other games you'd like to see us, integrate into this 5 hour trial format, let us know. Happy to get that feedback. David at thethirstymage.com. You can reach out via email. We're on Discord. You can also leave a review, feedback wherever your podcast app is, or on Spotify for The Thirsty Mage. That would be fantastic. Um, We're going to have episodes coming up soon on probably another deep dive on Final Fantasy 16. We're going to get back to Diablo 4 as well with as we get into the season content. I know I'm sure Casey started that. I'm doing the season content as well. It's fun. And then a Pikmin 4 episode. I think Paige and Casey will maybe join me for one on Pikmin 4. Probably a deep dive spoiler cast kind of type when we get through it. But that'll do us for this episode. David, did I miss anything? Anything else coming up that you know of that I may have missed?
No, I think that's it. Mostly just been focusing on the podcast episodes. The summer's usually busy, so yeah, not as much time to get all these extra games in. So
it's not like when we were kids and the summer was the time when we did play all these games. Now was the time when we have to watch our kids and stuff like that. So it's
taking the baseball and all that jazz.
Oh yeah, my kids just started bike camp today, and of course this is the first rain we've had in Vancouver in like 2 or 3 weeks. Of course it's today, right? I mean we needed the rain desperately for the crops and everything, but yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Hope everyone has a great evening. Again, if you enjoyed this format, this episode, let us know, please. We'll continue to make more of them, and we'll in addition to our deep dives and our impressions of new game type episodes as well. I think Dave and I will do a Trails into Reverie episode, maybe getting into August there when he gets through the game. But yeah, that's it for us, and we'll talk to you again on the first. Bye.
Bye.